Mather, welcome to the show, man. I were just talking about it. I know you recorded an episode with Scott like 6 months ago that never got posted. And I've been looking forward to having you back on. We work a lot together, week to week. And I just wanted to give everybody really quick, maybe a high level overview of your background. I'll let you do that. But so could you give everyone listening maybe just a quick background of you and sort of where you come from and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So I am from Philadelphia. I started out as a designer for it was an event company. So we did things like trade shows and grand openings and whatnot, movie openings. And so I've been involved with design, branding, and events for coming up on 20 years now. And then, of course, 2010, I got involved with CrossFit for the first time. So I just had my almost 11-year anniversary now with CrossFit. But at the same time, kind of blended my passion for events and design and marketing and business with CrossFit and started running some CrossFit competitions in the Philadelphia area. And then, of course, as that developed, we started coming up with plans and ideas that very closely mimicked what Grid was intended to be initially in 2014. And so when we heard about the ideas being drawn up by Tony Budding about Grid, we decided to get involved because, like I said, it very closely oriented with how the direction of our competition business was going. So got involved there, fell in love with the sport of Grid. That's how I met you and Sean. And then, in 2017, started the Florida Grid League with my sister Ruby. And that has continued to grow since then, and got involved with Level Method in, I think it was 2019.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the major points of how we got here today.
So, for those that I think most people know what Grid is, but maybe explain just real quick at a high level, like what happens in Grid and like why it's so exciting, that the races, everything, just kind of give a high level overview of what Grid is as a sport.
Yeah. So Grid is made up of matches. That is a Grid event. It's a team sport with a match is two teams going head to head. Team is made up of 16 active players, half of which are male, half are female. And the players have a wide range of kind of specialties or top abilities, and they are on a team to perform a race. So a Grid match is made up of a series of these races that are configured differently. Some are strength biased, so they have a lot of heavy barbells in them or other strength apparatus. And then some are more body weight oriented, so they have a lot of, say pull-ups or pistols. And then everything in between. There's strongman elements, there's powerlifting, Olympic lifting, then a lot of different CrossFit movements. And then we've also developed a lot of our own movements to help come and demonstrate the athleticism of some lower players. So like I said, these matches are made up of a series of races, and then whoever wins the most races according to the point system wins the match. And then the structure of the sport is very similar to any other team sport. So like football, baseball, basketball, there's a regular season, a playoff, and championship. And there's city-based teams. So there's an inherent fan base, associated with the city. And so, the kind of long-term vision and goal is to bring the first co-ed or team sport where men and women are treated equally into, the mainstream. So follow the kind of path of football and basketball and baseball, which is obviously a long path, but we think it has all of the makings of a modern team sport because it does focus on equality between gender, and then diversity because you need all different kinds of body types, all different kinds of backgrounds and skill sets to be an effective Grid team. So those characteristics combined with the fact that these races are super exciting, short and fast, they're for short attention spans. They were designed to be fun to watch, which is unlike most other sports in the world. And that combined with all the characteristics that really speak to the direction of society today in equality and diversity, that's why we think that it has the potential to be a major sport in the world in the long run. But whether it is or not, we're just enjoying the ride, and we love the sport as it is, and just want to keep it building.
And you mentioned, like it's designed as a spectator, like it's designed to be watched, and it's an exciting sport. Anybody that hasn't watched it and who hasn't seen how the races, there's basically two lanes and it's like head to head and it comes down to the wire like a lot of times. And everyone's just, it's like what in 2013, 14, when I think it's around that time. When we'd watch these, it was when grid was first starting, and it would be like the most electric environment, and I'm sure it's still the same way. That's the nature of the sport. And I haven't been to any grid events for a long time, but I remember I used to do some riding for grid, and it was just some of the most exciting stuff. And that's really, when it comes to creating a sport, that sort of needs to be at the forefront. Because you look at a sport like baseball, no offense to baseball, but it can be kind of like in some cases a little boring to watch, right? There's a lot of fans out there. So if that sport was being created today, would it be able to get any legs? And like, that's always, that was like one of the early like sort of conversations that were being had. And now grid is starting up, and it sort of has that the design of it is to be watched and to have this super high excitement. And the difference really with CrossFit, like there's a lot of similar movements, right? There are some similarities with it, but grid is much more geared towards like specialties of like, you have people that have really strong strengths, and you have the utility players that might be more like CrossFit based, but for the most part, it's kind of on the stronger you are at a certain thing, the better player you will be for those sorts of those races, right? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah. So, just to speak towards the excitement factor, because yes, it was designed to be exciting. And I think as the Florida Grid League, we've got 7-8 years of grid now in our league. We've been able to evolve it a little bit so that it's even more exciting now, because we've seen what components of races develop excitement and how to keep it even amongst the teams as much as possible so that there is that excitement finish. So we've definitely upped the percentage of matches that come down to the final race since the original days of grid pretty significantly. So, those are characteristics that are designed to be fun to watch. Very simple. You start at the start line, you finish at the finish line, and if it's exciting what's in between, anybody can watch it and have a good time. The other thing is we're working on ways to evolve the sport that one team can influence the other team's performance. And so, the one thing that was lacking in the sport of grid is there's no defense. You can't influence what happens in the other lane. Well, we're kind of involving new races and new rules to allow that to happen.
You like throw tennis balls.
Yeah, marbles.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. But yeah, so as far as that's great. But as far as the comparison to CrossFit, what we, first let me say we love CrossFit. We are all CrossFitters. I just had my 10-year anniversary. Some people assume because we play in the same space that we're competitors or anti. That's not the case at all. We see this as another way to enjoy what you develop in CrossFit. So if somebody wants to play the sport of grid and they don't know how to snatch, we send them to CrossFit. So we see a very synergistic coexistence where when you want to focus on fitness and being fit and learning some of these functional movements, go to CrossFit. When you want to take what you learn in CrossFit and find your skill sets that happen to be a really good fit for you physically, and then whatever your background is contributes to that. So however your body type is, or however your neurological system best benefits your physical activity, that's your spot in grid. So you go do that and have fun and play a game with it. So we care as much about fitness as football does, which is not a lot. You just need to be good at your individual role on a team. And that really has nothing to do with fitness at all. So just like there's linemen in football who might not fit your classical definition of fit, there are some big fellas in grid that can move a barbell like nobody you've ever seen, but they don't fit your traditional definition of fit. So that's really the biggest difference between us and CrossFit. We don't care about fitness. It has nothing to do with fitness. It has to do about, here's a race, here's a set of elements that need to be completed. You need to have certain physical abilities to complete those elements. And you're given 18 or 16 bodies to go out there with and perform those elements the fast that you possibly can. It has nothing to do with fitness whatsoever.
It's a sport. So it's a legit sport.
In the true essence of the word, is a sport. A lot of people will say, CrossFit's not a sport because of X, Y, and Z. We don't really get into that. It doesn't really matter. We love CrossFit. We love watching it. We like the games like anybody else that just happened and whatnot. And so we're not trying to take away from CrossFit in any way. We're just completely different. We're a separate category altogether. And so I hope we get to the point where we support one another as we grow. CrossFit right now, we're I don't know what they think about us. Doesn't matter too much to us, except that we'd like to work together. We'd like to bring more fitness to the world. We'd like to support what CrossFit is doing, because anytime I'm on one of these interviews or talking to anybody, I always say, I'm a CrossFitter through and through. I love CrossFit. And I hope that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I hope we're a tool for CrossFit to get bigger. And I hope that CrossFit someday realizes, I think they will, that we can be that role for them. And then we are just another outlet to create physical competition opportunity for what CrossFit provides. So.
And, that kind of brings up, from, gym owners, right? Gym owners out there are probably wondering, like, how does grid fit in? How does it work? But you can look at it like it could almost be people that want to compete. There are different, how do you compete? Where do you go? And if you're going to be doing CrossFit competition, because you mentioned earlier that in the early days, you did CrossFit competitions. And now, like, there might be an avenue for people in the gym that might want to go and be a specialist in grid in some form. So how does, grid work into the gym community, and how have you seen it successful? Because I know that a lot of CrossFit gyms, they include grid. They have, most of them are coming out of, like, the teams are coming out of CrossFit gyms, right? So how does that all work?
Yeah. So first of all, when a gym owner owns a team in the Florida Grid League, it's an incredible community builder, because the gym rallies around the team. It's their kind of, they're sending out their troops into, these matches. And the same is true for even when there's a player within a gym, because it's a local thing that people can go to and support a player from a gym and root for them as a representation of the gym. So it's a great community builder. But then you also, mentioned, like, every gym community has a varied set of athletes and a varied set of skill sets within those athletes. So the classic example is, every gym has somewhat newer athletes that haven't been on their fitness journey for a very long time. And, they might be a little bit on the heavier side. They're still working on getting their weight down or whatnot, but they're stronger than your average athlete. They have more mass. They maybe have a great deadlift. Well, now, they would never enter a CrossFit competition because there's pull-ups in it. There's double unders in it. There's box jumps in it. But you can send out the player to do deadlifts, and they're going to be the best on the floor at that. Now, they might never have experienced that opportunity to be the best in any physical competition they've been in before at a single element. So, we've seen where even, all levels versions of grid has had incredible impact on people that have never really competed before, because they found their physical niche on one of these teams and now can be a part of a team in a way that they never have before. And there's nothing that builds a community better than that. When you can share a team-driven experience where everybody utilizes their own individual physical characteristics to come together as a team and win or lose together, but fight together, utilizing each other's skills and abilities, and depending on one another for their own individual skills and abilities, and communicating and working together and developing a game plan together. So all of the reasons that we play team sports growing up exist in grid today. And it just allows a wider range of physical abilities to be involved in a formal competition that's even better at bringing people together because it's a team sport.
Yeah. And like I wrote down, competition as an element of almost personal development, right? So like the putting yourself into an environment like that is a little stressful, but you get to be highlighted and you get to do the thing that you're good at and really be focused on. Like within Level Method, we are about fitness, right? And so the way Level Method works, as most people know, you're working with your lowest level. So you might have reds in these things, and then you might have yellow in something. And Level Method is really designed to highlight that weakness and then move up the weaknesses, right? But grid is it's flipped. It's like, obviously you still might want to work your weaknesses if you're coming to the gym or whatever, but you could come and you could just highlight your strengths and then, go into an environment where you're forced to make decisions on the fly, be in a stressful environment. And that can really push someone to grow faster, right? That's kind of like the growth. And now when you see like the FGL Florida Grid League, like what are the caliber of athletes? Would you consider them pro? And then what do you do, or how would someone at a lower level or earlier level, how would they do grid? Like How does that all work?
Yeah, so one of the big initiatives for the Florida Grid League has been to develop different methods for all levels of fitness to participate, try it, play it, learn it. And so we have two primary ways that we do that now. One is called Grid 6. It's basically like a CrossFit competition where there's different divisions according to skill level. And then a team of 6 signs up with their friends, their training partners, and goes out and throws down within their division. So anybody can sign up for these competitions. They're one-day events, and it's basically scored like a CrossFit competition where each race has individual winners within that race, and then the overall cumulative score comes down to the end. But the caveat is the top 4 teams in a given Grid 6. The last event is the top 2 teams going against one another to find out who the winner is. So it all comes down to the last race to determine the winner. Because that's the
pressure's on.
The pressure's on. But that's the essence of grid, is you don't know who wins until that last race. So that's how we kind of bring the grid experience into a more traditional format where more teams can participate. The other way that we do it is called grid in-house. And so you basically form a grid team amongst your gym, and you go play against another grid team or another gym. And so those are very customizable to the environment of a gym, depending on skill level. And so depending on how into it we get, we'll sit down with 2 gyms that want to participate, and we'll figure out what kind of landscape of players they have, and then we'll program a match for them. And then they come in, and one will be the home gym, one will be the away gym. They might switch next time. And it's a freaking blast. These teams have a wide range of skill sets on them. Like, you take your top 18, top 15 players, or it doesn't even have to be your top. It could be anybody that wants to play. And you're going to have some higher skill set players. You're going to have some people that are newbies. And just having that range on a team is a pretty special thing, because, you got people playing on the same team with, what they might consider their inspiration, or, at a level that they could never attain, at least anytime soon. And that's a pretty powerful connection and bond. So anyway, those are 2 of the primary ways that any skill level can participate in the sport of grid that we've developed so far.
I remember back in when I had before I moved my gym to a new gym, the earlier gym we had, it was a much bigger space, and they had these roll up mats, and you would roll them out, and we put them in. So in my gym, we ran a couple Saturdays. We just did, for the Saturday class, we were doing races, and it was awesome. It was just as good. I mean, it's the excitement is there, and people are screaming because it's always coming down to the wire, and it's near panic trying to get this stuff done. And, that brings up a point, with certain movements, right? So when you're looking at grid, there's sometimes quite complicated movements. So if you go on TikTok or Instagram, you'll see these pretty insane movements. I don't even know, what are some of the crazier movements?
We got backward rolls to support, butterfly muscle ups, freestanding handstand push-ups. What else we got? Back up rise, double touch, triple touch.
And these are highly skill focused. Now at the lower levels, you can easily scale down the movements, so you're getting the same thing, but with quote unquote easier movements. And so is that kind of what happens with the 6 and these different things? Are you doing certain movements that are easier for people?
Yeah, we actually have a kids version of grid as well. So it's called Kids Grid, and they play between the adults when we have matches. So they'll come out and they do things like burpee box jump overs, and they'll do skips over bars, and then they have very light bar movements. They have med ball cleans, things like that. So it is completely scalable. You can run a grid match on completely bodyweight movements like burpees and push-ups and squats, and it's a great way to keep 12 kids entertained for an hour, and they will be incredibly engaged. It's insane how much they pay attention when they're on a team trying to beat another team, but doing things that they can do. You know what I mean? So that's actually been one of the things that's grown the fastest and gotten the most attention is Kids Grid. Is just, they absolutely love it. And then of course, when they come out and play, and then the big boys and the big girls come out to play, they can't, they're like, oh wow, and they get autographs and things like that. It's really a really cool ecosystem to see, because the kids, kids love sports, and this, this scales it so that everybody can participate, all different body types, even ages span together and can participate together. And it's a blast. It's so much fun.
And, you had mentioned earlier, like there's been a lot of evolution, maybe since I was involved and taking a look. And what are the big things that you found that has increased that excitement, like little tweaks that you've seen in races or structure that as you've gone, you've made adjustments to that'll make the sport, more sticky or more exciting? What are some of those things?
A couple of things is the programming, as far as, you can have exciting moments in the middle of races if you have like clear defining moments that two teams are working for at the same time, that have things where that is apparent, like distance. So anytime we can get distance involved, we do, because you can visually see where each team is very simply and easily. And then
like a horse race, like you can see, like, oh, this one's in front, this group's in front, and you're like waiting,
Exactly. So that's like, anytime we can get distance in there, we do. But also biasing shorter. So this was an evolution from the CrossFit mindset, and myself included. As CrossFitters, it's like, you better grind yourself into the ground or you're not doing a good job. You know what I mean? You've got to have more reps than you can physically do efficiently for it to be an effective workout. And therefore you've got a certain stimulus, a certain feeling you're going for, or you didn't even work out barely. You know what I mean? As it's like, if you're not gasping on the floor at some point during a competition and walk away feeling like you got hit by a truck, then it wasn't a good time, Right. And so detaching ourselves from that kind of thought process, mentality, and feeling took a lot of work. But the more we do, and the more we simplify and streamline and shorten the races, the more exciting they are, the more specialties get to shine, and the less the athletes get beat up. So the athletes still have to create that disconnection themselves. Like, you think about weightlifting, where people will travel across the globe to lift a barbell 6 times,
right?
Or discus or something. They have 3 throws,
like 15 seconds of work total or something.
Exactly. And that's a very popular and demanding competition, physically and mentally. But we have a ton of CrossFitters that we are trying to detach that mindset from, and be more of like, a closer doesn't complain that they come in and throw 6 pitches. They want to throw less pitches, Right. And so if we can, develop more of that mindset of people that are looking to fill their role the best they can, and that's them, their main mission, and that's like a fulfilling experience in itself. And there's nothing stopping us, but we're biasing that direction more and more, because it ultimately leads to a closer, more exciting match. But there's a balance. There's a balance to everything. We've got to, make it so that, everybody has a fulfilling experience on the team. And that's a very important component. But the other thing is our distribution opportunities, like TV shows and TV networks who we've been in contact with and talked with, they want shorter content as well. They want shorter matches. They feel humans' attention span is biasing shorter and shorter, and that a 3-hour football game is probably too long. And if it wasn't for the fact there's all this history with what it is, then they would push it shorter and shorter. So new sports coming onto the scene, they try and make them shorter and shorter. And I think it makes sense. So
yeah, the attention span, we're just reading a book, Mind Hacking Happiness. We were talking about it. And in that book, the guy, Sean Webb, is talking about attention span, how like we have now been surpassed by the goldfish or whatever, like human beings. And then Sean Buck just posted in our Slack, he was saying that like, well, if goldfish had TikTok and all these things, then their attention span would be dropped too. But going back to, shorter things, this brings up the point of like, one of the dangers of fitness is fatigue, right? Like doing things under a high level of fatigue. This is also part of what fitness is. Like you've got to be able to do under fatigue. But generally, would you say that grid, the chances of injury are less because people are more neurologically fresh when they're doing things? So they're not grinding through 100 reps of something. They're like doing something sharp and fast, and then they're able to recover from it and then come back and have high quality movement. Is that kind of what you see?
It's difficult because, a weightlifter can walk out on the platform completely fresh, but they're maxing out their lift. So there's still
there's a risk,
quote unquote, there's a high degree, quote unquote, high degree of risk associated with a maximum effort lift with a lot of weight over your head. And you see injuries in weightlifting all the time. You see injuries in CrossFit too. But the reality is people see some of our movements and think, oh, that's crazy. That's bad for your joints. You know, you do repeated movements, whatnot. But the average set for a grid player is 10 to 15 reps, the average set. A lot of them are a lot lower, especially on the more complex movements. So the grid player is not going out there and, performing them 3 times a week over the course of 6 months. That's just, there's no reason to do that. And there are good players that overtrain certain movements, just like there are, football players that, hit pads too many times when they shouldn't be. But that's part of sports. And what I generally say is, like, it's impossible to determine the, whether or not under fatigue is riskier than max load, or high repetition is riskier than, complete exhaustion, unless you look at statistics. But the reality is our sport is a lot less risky than, football or rugby or MMA. There's no head injuries, there's no brain damage. When you look at things like, surfing or skateboarding or rock climbing, there's loss of life that happens fairly frequently, unfortunately, associated with those sports. So, people talking about injury in our sport is frankly quite silly compared to that. If you're worried about people injuring themselves playing sports, go to those more riskier, well-known sports that are risky. And it's not people's fault. The only reason they think that way is because, CrossFit has created a reputation for being risky for the average person who doesn't know what they're doing. And so people tend to call that out about anything that slightly resembles CrossFit. So I don't blame people for thinking that way, but it's just when you understand the context of how the movements are performed, especially in comparison to other popular sports today, it's one of the safest sports that exists out there. Yes, you're still pushing your body to its maximum limits. That comes with a layer of risk that is unavoidable, as with any sport that's played, except for maybe curling. But that's sports. Like, some people choose to see what they're capable of in the world, and that comes with a level of risk that they're willing to do. And there's nobody that, sitting on their keyboard typing that should really affect whether or not that's the case.
Yeah. So it just basically, there is an inherent risk in any sport. And if it's your passion and you want to apply some of the skills that you have, then you got to select a sport that's best going to do that. And generally fitness, like when people are doing fitness, grid is an awesome avenue as a sport to kind of express some of those things.
Yeah. And another way I like to think about it is, like, I know intellectually that snatching and doing muscle ups isn't the safest way to train possible. Like, you could just stay home and do curls and push-ups and sit-ups. But for me personally, that's not enough for me to be fulfilled working out. And I've done both. I've tried it. And I need that push of complexity and competition and, seeing what I'm capable of to be motivated to continue on my fitness journey the way that I can. And that's part of the beauty of CrossFit. And that, it brings something out of you that you wouldn't have otherwise, that you didn't know you could do. But to me, I understand the riskiness of a muscle up compared to a push up. And I think it's worth it, and I have the right to make that decision. So, and it's not even a question as to whether or not it's worth it for me. So, that's just another way to frame the risk associated with certain things, because I am a healthier, more aware person because of taking that risk today. And if I, sustained an injury that took me out of being able to do it, I'd be sad, but I'd still wouldn't change it again for anything,
Yeah. And I think one of the big reasons we created Level Method was to be able to sort of slot people in to know what's appropriate and what's not. And that's one of the great things about CrossFit is expanding capacity. But I think the big problem is when someone is seeing this stuff and then they go and try to do it without having laid the groundwork. And I think that as long as somebody is doing, they have enough experience to whatever they're doing is appropriate for them to do, then that's the risk of sport. And there's nothing, but if somebody comes in and they're not ready for some, not in grid or whatever, if they come in and they just try to go climb a mountain and they don't have, you know what I mean? You can use it with anything. If you're not prepared, that lack of preparation can really come back and bite you. So that's awesome, man. There are a couple other topics that I'd like to talk about. We covered grid pretty well. Do you have anything that you'd want to add about grid in general at a high level before we kind of go on to maybe some marketing stuff or maybe some productivity stuff? What's on your mind?
No, I think that mainly covers it. when you're talking about the safety element of level method, I think that's one of the things that really draws me to it, is because, when I first started in CrossFit in 2010, that was when, the snatches in the CrossFit Games were the ugliest things you've ever seen, and I think the max snatch in 2010, my first year, was Jason Khalipa, was 205 pounds. I can snatch more than that now, which is insane. But it was also basically a muscle snatch. And so, doing things before your body is ready is taking the highest risk possible associated with that movement. And so that's one of the things I love about level method is it takes the required, knowledge and skill set of a coach way down as far as what's required to give a positive and safe experience to gym owners. And it also takes, or to gym members, and it also takes the unnecessary desire to perform at a higher level than your body is ready out of the equation, which is the biggest reason that people get injured doing CrossFit anyway. So when you take those elements out, it becomes way, way, way less risky, and you still reap all of the benefits. And the mental aspect of it is even better than if you were just out there, like trying to do a kipping pull-up before you can do a strict pull-up, and people trying over and over and over again when they can't do a strict pull-up. That's the cringeworthy stuff where you're like, ooh, yeah, like where's the coach involved? But yeah, so level method takes all of that out of it, and yeah, it's one of my favorite aspects about it.
And it's just, it's that structure, that really lays a foundation. And, part of tying this into sort of some marketing stuff, part of level method, within level method, we have this concept of power of moments. And we've been working together. You've been working with level method, helping with marketing, media, and teaching me a lot about social media specifically, and like maybe creating, or using images that are really good. And I've learned a lot from you. And I was thinking that maybe what would be cool is a high level just overview of some of the important factors when a gym, a gym owner has a gym, they're running workouts, they're taking pictures. They're like, this is one of the big things of level method is making sure that we're recognizing people for these achievements, creating powerful moments. But, creating a powerful moment, there are good ways to do it, and then there are not so great ways to do it. And what are some of the fundamentals when it comes to, say, posting a picture on Instagram or whatever that would be very useful for a gym owner to know? It's something that I wish that I had known earlier. And I know the answer, but I'm going to let you answer it.
Oh, I love this question. This is a juicy question. There's this thing that a lot of gym owners do that is shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to social media. And that is to take like the first generation iPhone and like snap these weird, awkward pictures of their members that are all dark and like, maybe there's like grease on their lens or something. So it's all like smudged, and, those pictures, or doing an Instagram live and it's all like dark and dingy. And that is not painting a good picture of your gym. That is painting a picture that it's like freaky in your gym. It doesn't have to be perfect or highly choreographed, or it doesn't have to be nice photography, but it does have to be bright, clear. It doesn't even have to be compelling, but just, capturing those moments where hopefully there's something positive going on in your gym, and making sure that you wipe the lens off of your phone or whatever you're using to take the picture, and that you have, a lighting source that's behind you so that whatever you're looking at looks bright, and inviting and welcoming, is going to go a long way to painting a positive picture about your gym on social media, rather than, looking like. I'll give you another example. You ever gone to a restaurant and like the pictures in the menu look like, dirty and old, and, it looks like a pile of slop on a plate, and you're like, I'm not going to eat here. That's like, that is the most unappetizing picture I've ever seen.
But it tastes good.
Right.
Like, how do you can't relate that, right?
You can't. It doesn't connect. So when people see, these dark figures moving in front of them, and there's smudges, and it looks kind of dull in there, and people don't want to go to that place. That's not a fun place of fulfilling experience. It's subconsciously a dungeon, and nobody wants to go to a dark, dingy place.
And someone might be wondering, like, because you do have a background in marketing, but in terms of like a little bit of proof, when you started with FGL, you obviously started at 0, right? Like all the followers. So where are you now? Instagram, FGL, where are the followers, and like, what are the numbers about?
Yeah, we're 5 years in since we started our accounts, and we're at 300,000 followers on Instagram. And I think we got 280 some thousand on TikTok. So those are our two main platforms.
Clearly, whatever you're doing is working. This is why, like, when we started working together, I'm like, okay, dude, just tell me whatever we got to do. Because I think that, gym ownership or entrepreneurship, and we can talk about some of this too, because this is like a little bit behind the scenes sort of stuff. But we start a business, and there are a lot of different hats we have to wear, and there's a lot of different things we got to do. And there's like, you got to do your social media, you got to make sure you're taking care of members, you got to be making sure the gym. And over time, you start to learn you need a team, you need processes, you need these things in place. But some of these just very fundamental ideas, like clear shots, and something that I've learned from you, when we do our social media, is you want to be highlighting like expressions, and you want to make sure that there's excitement in the picture. And for a lot of people listening, that might be pretty obvious, but you'll see it all over the place. And for many years, I was like, step one is like, let's just get consistent with posting, right? And once you can get consistent with okay, step two now is how do we make it a little better, make it more refining it. So what are your, like, in terms of managing social media for like a gym that's maybe just doing Instagram, what would you say, like some of the rules or some of the things that someone should be thinking about, a gym owner? What should they be focused on if they're just getting started, or maybe they have a pretty good social media presence, but they want to up their game a little bit, maybe like refine some things, get some processes in place? What should they do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's two main things. One is incentivize sharing amongst your members, because it's basically a referral. When somebody shares something from a gym account, they are showcasing something they're proud of. And so highlighting each individual member in a way that makes them want to share it is gold, because that's a referral to the 100 or 1,000 people that follow them. So,
highlighting an individual, making sure that the post is quality, that the person that sees it is going to be proud of that, to want to share it and be like, look at this badass thing I did, essentially. Exactly.
And, as far as like the post types, and we've talked a little bit about this, but imagery, real life pictures that aren't super staged tend to do a lot better than super designed, graphic-y looking things. And, when a company posts a logo on their social media, nothing but a logo, and, this is like one of our kind of secrets, but the percentage of engagement is a fraction of if they post live photos too. People don't want to see logos and graphics. They want to see real human beings on social media. And so if you could be paying a design firm thousands of dollars to give you the highest quality graphics, but if they're cutting people out and showing them in unnatural ways and with a lot of text and layers, people just going to swipe right past it. And if you don't believe me, look at an account that has both. If you have an account that has a bunch of graphics and then a bunch of, lifestyle imagery and video, the imagery and video is going to outperform 100x. And so if you look at the FGL accounts and you scroll through our account, you won't see any graphics, none, because the opening screen will never be a graphic, because that'll get scrolled every time. So real life human beings doing cool things, showing expression. Like you said, there's an engaging element to it one way or the other. And the best posts have multiple engaging elements. But if it's telling the story of your community and of the gym, that's an engaging element. If it's a member that a lot of people respect and love, that's another engaging element. If they're doing something impressive, that's another engaging element. So the combination of all these things are giving lots of people reasons to stop and look at it. And then the people that are subject to that post to share it, which creates opportunity for more people to stop and look at it. And that's how things start getting momentum and reaching farther, and then ultimately creating more benefit for social media accounts.
Yeah, it's, because like a great example of that we have just been kind of, exploring is our Power of Moments posts in Level Method, right? So if anybody goes to Level Method Instagram and scrolls through, and you can go back and see when we used to do these, we recognize everybody that gets a level up, right? So we take the most exciting pictures of people getting levels ups, however it is, whatever the word is. Now, what we did originally, we would put all of the pictures on one thing. So it was like, if you remember back in the day, I mean, they're probably still happening, but level ones at CrossFit, and there's like on the main site, you'll see like just picture after picture of groups of images of people. And it's just like, okay, that's kind of what we were doing with our Power of Moments. And what we did is we switched that and we took the top 10 images. So we scraped the images, we take the top 10 most exciting ones, and then we put the most exciting one first. And now that creates engagement, because as someone's scrolling through, they're not seeing some big blob of a whole bunch of busyness and a whole bunch of stuff. They're dialing into either an individual expression or, you know, body language that's showing excitement, and someone's like, ooh, and then we'd swipe. And that, just since doing that, the amount of, you know, clicks on and swipes and all that stuff has dramatically increased. And that's just exactly what you're saying. Is like, you want to make sure that you're highlighting and not trying to be so I mean, we don't want to say don't be professional, but when I say professional, I mean like with all the graphics, and I'm trying to be corporate. Maybe corporate's a better word. And when you have a gym and you have 150, 200, 100, however many members, sometimes you can think that, oh, corporate is going to make people think that we're even better. Like we're taking a step, but really what that does is it doesn't connect with the individual. And so it doesn't work as well. So I think that just these basic ideas can dramatically increase the amount of engagement, the amount of shares and all that stuff, which is what social media is all about. Like, why the heck is anybody posting if it's not to have an effect, a positive effect on the business? So any like gold nuggets or things that you think would be valuable, like just a tip or a trick, like a single thing that a gym owner could do to leverage something? Is there anything on your mind when it comes to that?
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, gym owners aren't necessarily doing anything revolutionary to the point where, you know, they could share a post and, you know, of their gym, and it's going to get astronomical, go viral type reach, because, you know, it's a gym environment and it's not something that people haven't seen before. But that being said, the people inside are that like gold aspect of your gym that you want to highlight in a way that makes them want to share. And then you know, all you really need to reach are your friends or your members' friends and their family. And then when they are reached, they're reached. So just developing a strategy where that's the focus is like, how can I tell the story of my gym and what goes on in here and the positive effect it has in a way that's going to reach my members' friends and their friends. And that's it. And as a gym owner, that strategy would include having more engaging posts and having quality posts and things like that. But more importantly, you know, defining the types of content that's going to have that effect. So things that celebrate those members, that highlight their achievements, that show them having an amazing time, that talk about the components of what you're doing on a daily basis that creates positivity in people's lives. Those are the things that when they reach those people will have the effect that you want, because all of those people, the thousands and thousands of people that those are, the friends of friends that are connected on social media accounts, there's a big percentage of them that want what you have and they want what you're giving as long as you run a good gym. And so all you got to do is show that, you know, in a way that people want to share and show again. And if you do that, there's no limit to the power that a social media account can have. And you can go from a gym that's struggling to a highly effective gym just by reaching those thousands and thousands of people a little bit better, because you're going to get hundreds of people that want what you have to give just by doing that.
So, I mean, this is something I learned from you too, quality over quantity, right? So it's like, if you can do one awesome post that's going to get shared, highly engaged, versus 10 that don't get any engagement or are getting followers from places that aren't going to actually affect your business, right? It's better to have quality over quantity and be talking to the members that you have and talking to their friends and family as a priority over, you know, numbers, or we got to post every day because that's the rule that we said or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when people fall trap into is that, you know, if I post every day, it's going to do better. But unfortunately, the reality is if you post every day, but it's not quality content, you're doing two things. You're telling people that you're posting that not quality content, so they become conditioned to skip over. And they say, okay, there's nothing really from this account that I like to see, so they skip it. That means it's going to be shown to them less and less.
And so they're not necessarily going to unfollow, but they're just they've unfollowed in their brain.
Exactly. And so the algorithm will respond and suppress you even more. So like you said, speaking to your community, so posting for your community, but in a way that they want to share and they engage with and they value, so that when they see, oh, here's a post from my gym, I'm going to look and see what's going on. I'm conditioned to stop the scroll, absorb it, maybe share it, maybe, read it or something because I've gotten value in the past from it or whatever, or I see my friends or I can learn something that's going on. Then you've won. And as far as I understand, nobody knows these algorithms completely, but as far as I understand it, that you can post once a week on Instagram, but if that one post does really well, you can have 4, 5, 10 times the amount of reach and engagement on a single post than you would if you posted 7 times a graphic post that people scroll past the second they see it, because it's not doing Instagram any good to show people that if they're not going to engage with it. So they're going to show it to more people if they see a level of engagement within each post, even if you post once a week or once every 2 weeks. I'm not suggesting that's what you do, but like you said, once you get into a way of, okay, I'm making some posts now. Okay, now I turn up the frequency. If I have a system to maintain the quality, without, while increasing my capacity as well,
and that's like when you think about time and the amount of time it takes to sometimes build posts and like what you're trying to say, it's one of the reasons why we have in Level Method this social media service, which is like, they're done for you posts, but it's not necessary. I mean, some of them are specific to your people. So it's like a level up or something like that, but they're more like education posts. They're more like engagement posts for your members. And then you can layer on top specific things like that. So ideally you're posting high quality content all the time, right? So like in the best case scenario, every single day you'd have badass posts to go out and people are engaging with it, but we don't have that time. Like people in general, if you got to hire a social media manager or something. So the best of both worlds is to sort of have a done for you element. And then also, and I'm not trying to make this a pitch, somehow it became a pitch, but it's just I was just thinking about it. Like that's why we have this social media service, is just for this reason, so that gym owners can get high quality stuff out, but still have the time to do all of this stuff, which is specifically highlighting members with engaging personal posts that are like highlighting someone's so they're celebrating their accomplishments. It's showing their face, it's showing joy, it's showing excitement. All of these things. This is like what Alex is really good at and has in my gym. She did all of the social media stuff, and she would take all these pictures. We had a really nice camera at the gym. Take a picture like with a digital camera, like a full-on digital camera, one of those like Canons or whatever. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but all these different, and then would take them all, put them on, and then go through all of the pictures and select the best ones. And those would go on Facebook. And so it was like this really awesome system that we have. And we're running out of time. I wanted to talk to you a little bit. Maybe we can spend 5 or 6 minutes going over some just productivity stuff. Because anybody that knows Level Method knows us. Internally, we're very, and productivity is a buzzword that I'm not a big fan of. It's like, we want to be so productive and be grinding and all that, but it's more about being able to get more done with less effort, and to be able to be focused on the most important things and to get like the team on board with certain things. So we're all moving in the right direction. So, at a high level, like we've done a lot of talking on it, but what would you say in terms of like managing a team or with your own personal productivity, like making sure things get done? What are your big tenets, or some of the big rules or some of the lessons that you've learned over the last few years as you've been growing FGL? And you've probably noticed that if you let it, more and more will pile and pile and pile up. And how do you manage that? How do you do it with your business?
Yeah. So one of the big reasons I love being involved with Level Method is because it has reformed, and like we talk about this all the time. I've learned a ton from you about the personal system, defining that. I read Getting Things Done a couple of years ago, but the concepts I understood, but I didn't implement in the same way. Like I went through some of the practices, but it just didn't connect. And as I started getting more and more involved with Level Method, it started connecting. And of course, I had a form of a personal system prior to, but it was very sporadic. It was very disorganized. It was very, it had a lot of holes. It was like, it had a lot of opportunity for things to slip through. So reforming it, redefining it. I think the biggest thing is there's a lot of people out there doing some really important high level stuff that don't have any kind of personal system. And they just feel like forgetting things, not getting back to people, having to scramble when they've forgotten something is just part of it. Like that's just normal. And that's not true, and I know from working with you and some other people that I really try to continue to work with because I enjoy it. Nothing gets slipped through the cracks. When there's a question, maybe there's one follow-up one way or the other. But that's it. Like there's no waiting around. There's no missed deadlines. It's 5 minutes after the meeting time and they're not here yet. And it's like clockwork, and I know when we have a meeting, we're both going to be there on time. I know that like if we say there's 3 things like randomly in a meeting that need to get done for each other, they're all 3 going to get done by both of us. And those are the little things that the average company, I think, maybe that's not right. Maybe especially a newer company, it's just expected that, okay, you have a meeting, you come to 10, outcomes that need to take place. 8 out of 10 of them don't have a first step associated, so they're automatically gone. Like there's nothing going to happen with them.
Big.
And
like,
yeah. And then there's 2 that are really, really important, but who's next or what the next step is kind of ambiguous. And so the personal system has raised my productivity, I would say, more from the ability to do a wider range of things and keep track of more individual small things, because I would spend, my productivity when it came to a single project has increased, but not near as dramatic as my productivity in a wide range of requirements. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, building a team, keeping track of each person, making sure they have what they need, having, 150 players, 8 team owners, 20 sponsors, our own individual team within the FGL. All of these people have different needs, requirements, things to follow through with. So keeping track of all of that amongst my sister and I is a real challenge that if we didn't have a personal system for it, would be completely impossible, quite frankly. So it's incredibly important. And it's one of those things where people kind of like know they need to do it. They kind of roll their eyes like, it's just another thing that I don't really think is going to have a big deal, but it is a life and game changer. And it's not just about business either. It's like, everybody has things they want to accomplish in their personal life that you say, oh man, I'd really love to do that someday. And then they never really think about it again or don't ever take steps. But this allows a method and a way to like take steps towards actually doing it. Do you really want to do that? Why? And if so, how are you going to do it? And then what are the steps to making that happen? And then documenting them and making a plan and building time around them. And all of those things the average person doesn't do. And therefore they don't do a lot of the things that would really fulfill them in their life, because taking that next step and that organizing to make sure that that happens is such a daunting thing when you don't have a method and a plan to do it and a way to kind of organize and plan it. So.
Yeah. Like in the early part of that, like when you were just talking right now, what popped into my mind, and one of the original reasons why I became pretty obsessed with a personal system was because integrity. It's integrity with yourself and others. So like, I can't tell you how many times, I mean, you can ask anybody that knew me from 2011. I mean, before that too, but 2011, when I started the gym, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, it's like, oh yeah, I'll get that to you. Totally forget. Oh, I say to myself, oh, I want to start doing that. Totally forget. It just evaporates. And so you're not able to maintain integrity. And I think that's like one of the biggest things is if you say you're going to do something, like if you have a structure or a system in place, you can put it in that thing and then you're going to look at it later. Otherwise, if you don't have that thing, that structure or a system to put something into, you got to hold it in your head. And there's a finite amount of space that you can hold things in your head, and you're going to forget something, right? If you have a bunch of stuff, you're like, oh, I'll remember that. You're going to forget it, right? This is just the nature of how our brains work. So I think that's very cool. Anybody that's listening that wants to know more about a personal system, how to develop it, we have been doing a series of blogs on Level Method where you can go through, we call it COPE, right? Capture, organize, plan, engage, which is a play off of GTD's steps, but it's more geared towards gym owners and professionals and people who are working. And it's just a step-by-step process of building out a personal system for yourself, because it does make a big difference. So yeah, we're pretty much out of time. Mather, do you have anything that you want to share in terms of how people can get in touch with you if they want to get involved with the FGL, or if they have a gym, they want to get involved with maybe running some stuff at their gym, or just in general? How do people get in touch with you, and what are your final thoughts?
Yeah. So one thing about the personal system before you leave that I think, you and I have talked a little bit about this, and my sister and I do too, because she's got an incredible personal system. She's had one for forever. She's been trying to get me into it. But regardless, everybody has people in their lives that when they say they're going to do something, you have zero faith that that's actually going to happen. And when you hear them say, "Oh yeah, I'll get that to you," you almost think there's such a small chance they're actually going to, that I don't even know why I asked type thing. Nobody wants to be that person, but everybody has a tendency to be that person in certain situations. Mm-hmm. And so this is a way to not be that person. And, and you said something about being incongruent with yourself. And like, the more you say things, but don't follow through, the more you're okay with it. And that starts to apply to other things in your life. And that's how you really you lose integrity, like you said. So it's not just a productivity. It's really living in congruence with yourself, and living a better life, because people can rely on you. They believe what you have to say, and you can follow through on the thing. So it's just such an important thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love that. It's perfect. It's exactly. I mean, I've always wanted to be a capable person. Right. I want to be capable. I want to be dependable. I want to make sure if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. There's no doubt. There's no chance, because you don't want to leave someone hanging and like be that sort of person. And I think that, it's right in line with the way I think, for sure.
Nobody wants to be that unreliable person that everybody's like, "Oh God, this guy." Like, if I want to get something done, or if I tell them to be there somewhere, they're going to be 15, 20 minutes. Like, that kind of thing is a repeatable pattern and can progress worse or can progress better, And so when you start to be okay with just saying, you tell somebody you're going to do something, even in the back of your own mind, you're not really going to do it, right. Then that's an issue. So that's when you should start taking steps to look.
Yeah.
But if you're running a gym and you're like that, you just can't be successful. It's impossible.
Yeah, for sure. So if someone did want to get in touch with you, how would they do that? What are the steps?
Yeah. So FL Grid League is our Instagram handle. Our website is floridagridleague.com or thefgl.com. And there's plenty of ways to get in touch there. There's a lot of information about the sport. We always want people that would be interested in being involved at any level to get in touch, because we've had some people that are really involved in the organization now be so thankful that they did, because they really resonate with what the sport is and what it does. So highly recommend, if any of this resonates, get in touch, and we'll figure out a way to take it to the next step.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, man. I know it's been a while, like in terms of months of when we've been trying to get you on, but I'm super glad we were able to do this. And we'll be in touch. I'm going to see you probably in the next couple of days. So I'll see you soon, man. Thanks for being on.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.